Rock and Roll Geek Show 751.
Still rocking after all these years.
This is the story of my rock and roll butler.
This is it, the show that started it all. Often imitated, but never equal. From San Francisco, USA. Online since 2004. It's the one and only Rock and Roll Geek Show. With the original Rock and Roll Geek, Michael Butler.
Welcome to the Rock and Roll Geek Show. My name's Michael Butler. Thanks a lot for joining me. I really appreciate it. Today's Friday, December 23rd, 2016, when I'm recording this show. And when I'm doing this intro, show open, it is, I don't know, it's daytime sometime. I can't see the clock. Oh, it's 1:19 p.m. Well, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees were announced this week, and some people who did not get in nominated were the Cars. They did not get in. Nominated was the J. Giles Band. Did not get in. Here's who got in. Joan Baez. I guess you could say Joan Baez deserves it, in my opinion. Electric Light Orchestra, they definitely deserve it. They had some hits. They didn't have a lot of huge hits, but I think they deserve it. Journey, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think Journey actually deserves it. They had a shitload of hits, and yeah, I think they deserve it. Pearl Jam, no, I do not think Pearl Jam deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Come on. I mean, I guess that's arguable, but in my opinion, no. Tupac Shakur, absolutely not. I know why Tupac is in. Same reason that NWA is in, because I guess you could say it's affirmative action for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know. Maybe I could be. I'm probably wrong, but I don't think Tupac Shakur should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not only did he, I don't think he had a lot of hits. I don't think he was that influential. I don't know why he's in. I don't know. But he's in. Yes is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Absolutely, Yes deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they are pretty much the forefathers of prog rock. Also awarded for musical excellence, Nile Rodgers, which was he in Chic too? Chic does not deserve to be in, but I think Nile Rodgers probably does, I guess. Anyway, so in honor of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, I'm going to have a guy on tonight who was actually on the board of trustees on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. His name is Chris Formant. How did you get somebody from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame board of trustees on? Well, it just happened to be a coincidence because Chris Formant wrote a really good book. It's a It's a piece of rock and roll fiction. It's a novel, and it's kind of a rock and roll mystery. It's called Bright Midnight. Author is Chris Formant. Like I said, he's on the board of trustees at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I was offered an interview with him before I knew he was on the board of trustees at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The book publisher actually found me and said that we think he might be a good fit for your show because he wrote a book that has rock and roll as the backdrop for his novel. And I said, sure, send me a copy. I'll look at it, and if it fits, I'd like to have him on if the book's any good. Well, I'm halfway through the book, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's a fun read. I don't normally read books of fiction, but I'm enjoying this one. So, and when I got the book, after I did a little bit of research on Chris Formant, I found out he's on the board of trustees at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he gets to vote. So I thought, sure, that sounds like a great idea. So I had him on. We talked a couple of days ago. Of course, the first thing I asked him was about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I grilled him on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, actually, and I might have grilled him a little too hard. He was very polite about it, but I could tell that he was not wanting to be grilled like he was being grilled by some little schmuck on a podcast. But it's a good interview. Chris Formant, he was a very smart man, and he wrote, like I said, he wrote a good book. It's a quick, fun read called Bright Midnight. It is on Astor Blue Editions Press. I think that's the publisher's name. I'm going to shut up and let this interview roll. It's me talking to Chris Formant. We talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We talk about the book Bright Midnight, and and we just talk rock. I hope you enjoy it, friends. Thank you so much for your donations. Without your donations, this show would die a horrible, putrid, stench-filled death. You can find this show at rockandrollgeek.com. If you like this episode, send me an email, rockandrollgeek@gmail.com, and let me know what you thought of it. Or, better yet, find Chris Formant and let him know you heard him on the Rock and Roll Geek Show. That way he would know that his time, his hour spent with Michael Butler wasn't wasted. All right? Thank you for listening, friends. Have a great Christmas. Here is the Chris Formant interview. We'll talk to you very soon. Chris Formant, thank you so much for coming on the Rock and Roll Geek Show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, Mike.
So I'm almost halfway through this book called Bright Midnight. I'm enjoying it. It's a very fun read. It is I guess you can call it a rock and roll murder mystery. But before we talk about this book, can I talk a little bit about you first?
Sure, absolutely.
Apparently, you must be, I should probably call you sir, because you're Senior Vice President and Global President of Verizon Enterprise Solutions. Is that you?
Yes.
What does that do? What is that?
Well, we do, Verizon. They're a big, iconic company. You see them on the consumer side and the wireless side. I run the business, the enterprise, the business and government side. What we do for businesses and governments around the globe. So it's Verizon's only global business.
And you're the president.
And I'm the president of that.
You must be loaded.
No.
Where do you live?
I live in a couple of places. I live in New Jersey because our headquarters is in Basking Ridge, and then I also have a place in the Inner Harbor of Baltimore.
Oh, nice.
I like Baltimore. Yeah.
You like the Baltimore crab? I was just out crabbing a couple of days ago, but this was for Dungeness crab, not
blue crab.
Not only are you a big deal in the Verizon universe, but you are also on the board of trustees on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yes, sir.
What is the board of what does the board of trustees do at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Do you have any say in who gets nominated?
Well, we have a vote.
Oh, you do.
We have a vote. Yeah, the board votes. We have 5. We can vote for 5 candidates each, and I did.
Which one?
And
well,
I can tell you now because it was announced. I voted for. Here in order of my voting, I'll tell you in order and why I did.
How many people were nominated this time?
19.
19. Okay.
There actually was a list of about 30 some odd, and they get nominated by past inductees, and then there's a group of people who vote, and then there's a I guess you'd call it a popular vote, where people can vote. That's for that. They get the equivalent of 1 vote, so it's still pretty concentrated.
Yeah.
Among music people, former winners, and the board and the foundation.
Do you remember who all was nominated?
If I had a second, I could go back to the website, but I can't remember. I can't remember everyone. I mean, some of the groups I didn't know.
It was the Cars. I'm trying to think of the rock.
Kraftwerk, right? Shaka Khan, the Zombies.
Okay. Was Jay Giles Band nominated?
Jay Giles Band was nominated too. I actually, on my Twitter account, I got lobbied by his son-in-law.
by Peter Wolf's son-in-law?
Yeah.
Very nice. And it didn't sway you, huh?
No,
you did not vote for Jay Giles Band.
I'll tell you who I'll tell you who I can tell you who I voted for now because it's already in. But I voted for Pearl Jam.
Okay. Why? And now, why do you think Pearl Jam should be in?
I think they're pretty. The criteria that's used.
What is the criteria?
Well, it's people it's groups or individuals or writers, who have had, in some cases, someone substantial in the music medium, but it's someone who's had an impact on it. So it's not necessarily, someone who's sold the most records or is the most popular, but it's someone who's had an impact.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because that But go ahead. That tells
Because
me a
some
lot
of
of
the
people
people who
should
have
be
gotten
in.
in the past are people who had unique impact, but they weren't as large.
Okay.
And some
All right.
people had a lot of commercial success. They really they it's maybe unlike a sports Hall of Fame where it's just pure metrics, except for Pete Rose, but it's
Right.
pure metrics. It's it's a little bit more thoughtful,
So,
than that.
so you voted for Pearl Jam because they were influential,
Right, and popular,
and popular, sold a lot of
and they,
records.
Tupac Shakur, a real
Uh-huh.
groundbreaker, poet. Whether you like the lyrics and the topic or not, very influential. Um, Journey, just because of Journey experienced huge popular
So you
success.
did vote for all these people that.
I did voted for
Okay.
those three. I voted for five. Okay.
Now, before we move on, Tupac Shakur, that's pretty controversial because it's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I do
Hmm.
realize why they nominate rap artists like, last time was Public Enemy who got in last time. I don't something like I don't, no
NWA.
NWA. That's right, and I understand why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominates rap artists because but I don't necessarily agree with it. So, but you think
Well,
Tupac?
well, well. Remember that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a museum. I like to characterize it. I think of it like the Library of Congress for rock.
Uh huh.
Okay, and if you define it as rock and roll from what we characterize as the classic rock era, then it's going to be limited, and the audience will be limited, and it'll eventually kind of wither. So that not only have you been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No, I have not.
Yeah, so if and we're in the process of a large capital raising, so we can do a substantial renovation and expansion,
Uh-huh.
and really make it, it's one of the, it's one of the most unique destination places in the world, but make it like the best concert you've ever been to in your life. But it has to keep it has to keep expanding,
So by
and
putting
defining. So, it's all, rock and roll is just not one type of music. We're incorporating everything.
putting NWA and Tupac and R&B
And
and
I'm
rap,
sure in the future there'll be electronic dance music. There'll be everything. It's expanding beyond that as music expands into, just like rock and roll, was pioneering and radical at some point. Some of these other types of musical genres are in their own way. And so we just expanded the umbrella to incorporate everybody.
Well, a lot of
into it.
people are really passionate about. Don't worry, we're going to get to Bright Midnight. I promise, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are very passionate about the Rock and Roll Hall, about who should be in, and a lot of people
Right.
say
Oh, yeah.
it's not the Rap Hall of Fame, it's not the Disco Hall of Fame, blah 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 blah. It's not the pop, what that. So is the reason that I'm trying to clear this up because there's a lot of listeners of my stupid little podcast that to feel this way, and I'm trying to clear it up for them. So
Well,
do you think putting rap artists and stuff? So the reason is you want to expand it because it helps get more money for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
No. That's not it. It's how narrow or expansive you define rock music.
Okay, it could be an attitude.
Is rock music just classic rock that started in 65, 66, and ended in 75? I mean, how far does it go?
Right.
So what do you, because it evolved. I mean, punk rock was different than classic rock, and alternatives different. So what is it? How do you define it? And so, we've chosen to define it in pretty broad terms. And there are a lot of, if you look at, you can't get in until 20 years after your first hit. So it's not unlike other kind of sports Hall of
Sure.
Fame. So, you see it, and you see it in other sports Hall of Fames. It's very, it gets increasingly difficult for the older, a lot of the generations that maybe have all died off or about time, because the window starts closing because as, the new relevant history, the classic rock era is 50 years, that the stars that I fictionalized in Bright Midnight are in the late 60s and early 70s. That's 50 years ago.
Right. Okay. So
So that's a long time ago. So it would be like when I don't know how old you are, but it'd be,
I'm probably older than you.
Think back when you were a kid and you're thinking back 50 years from that. Think of the events that were going on, and so, it becomes, the new relevant history and the relevant musicians appear younger to older people, but they really aren't. Some of these guys, it's been 20 years since, Tupac's first hit or Pearl Jam's first hit.
How old are you?
60.
Oh, you're
Just
not.
turned 60.
Okay. You're a little bit older than me. Okay,
Yeah.
so you voted for Pearl Jam. You voted for Tupac. You voted for Journey. And who else?
Voted for Yes.
All right, so everybody who got in, you voted for so far.
Voted for Yes because I think that they were one of the maybe more popular sort of jazz fusion. I mean, it depends how you look at some of the groups. They could be rock or jazz, and so they had a real jazzy influence.
They were like the original prog rock.
Yeah, so they're geniuses.
They were nominated last time, right?
Pardon me?
They were nominated last year too, weren't they?
Yeah, some of these guys have been nominated, not Pearl Jam, but some, and not Tupac, but some have been nominated 2, 3, 4 times.
Did you vote for Yes last year?
No.
Huh? Why this year?
And then my last vote was, we try to do it. I try to do it by time periods and genres. And I was looking back in the late, in the 60s and early 70s, and there were 3 or 4, entertainers and groups, and I voted for Joan Baez.
Okay, all right.
I thought it was time, and so protest. And I think the Zombies and Steppenwolf, and I forget who else were there.
The Cars.
At the time. Their Cars a little bit later. Cars a little bit later.
Okay, so you did not vote for the Cars, who were also nominated last year. You don't think the Cars deserve to get in before Pearl Jam?
I think a lot of the people deserve, but there are only so many spaces. It's like it's like the NFL.
So I'm guessing that like next year the Cars will get in, and some bands, probably Jay Gall's
No,
band.
I don't even know who's going to be nominated. There are a lot of groups that are very famous, that have the Moody Blues are not in.
Exactly. Why not?
Don't know.
Why
they've been, because it's hard when you're in that kind of position. Now, remember, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a museum. That is hard. It's in a museum, and they do these awards. The award ceremony is for recognition and sort of memorialization in the museum. But that's one of the big. There are 2 big fundraising activities every year. That, and then something called the American Music Awards.
So do you think that they induct the people based on they want to have a good HBO TV show? Is that, you think that has nothing to do with it?
I don't think that's anything, because everybody's, I mean, the people are going to tune in every year, for it. And sometimes maybe, and there are always a couple, very extremely popular groups that'll have a huge following there, and so I don't think they don't have to worry about that. I mean, there's nothing like it in the world.
Do you go to every induction ceremony every year?
Yep.
Did you you went last year? What did you think of Steve Miller's thing afterwards?
He probably wishes he had it back.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of entertaining.
I think that's little, rock stars are very narcissistic.
I'm so
And
Cheap Trick had probably the best following that night, right?
they're all good. Deep Purple too. I mean, some of them you just never know. You never know who's there. We all have our personal likes.
Who?
And so, you could be there and you could say, God, this is fantastic. I can't believe, and I could be there and have, and go gaga over something else. I mean, it's just a great, if you're a rock music lover, it's just complete, it's Disney World.
Right. So,
and so it's just great. I mean, I don't even have an opinion. I think it's just, you're in awe the whole time.
are there, do you think you'll vote differently next year, like based on some of the guys, maybe like if you didn't vote for the Cars or didn't vote for whoever you didn't vote for, you think you'll vote for them next year?
I look at it. I look at it the same way everybody, the other members do. Look at it in terms of who else are who else are being nominated. And I think some have been nominated a number of times and haven't gotten in. Some get in on their first, try. It's just like, it's like you see with the NFL or in Cooperstown.
Like Pearl Jam got in on their first try. This was the first year they were nominated.
Yeah, so some of them get in. I mean, they're that influential and wide-reaching, and some don't.
Did you vote for Kiss when they got in?
I wasn't on the board then.
Oh, you weren't? How long have you been on the board?
About 5 years.
What do you have to do to be on the board of trustees at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I have no idea.
Really?
They
just asked? Huh. Are you friends with Jan Winter?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. They didn't. Nope. It actually, it had, no.
If Susie Quattro was nominated, would you vote for her? Because she's very influential, extremely influential. Joan Jett.
No. I mean, you have to take it, I don't think it's a fair question to take people in isolation. There's a whole set that'll be nominated, and they span a number of genres and generations. And so, when you actually see it and lay it out holistically, it's a rather, I take it very seriously as do the other people that vote, and so we look across a number of different areas. And so some people, you'd be surprised how many competitors in sort of the same genre. And it's very tough. I mean, it becomes, you may look at the same set of people and come up with an entirely different prioritization than I would.
You probably
just because of either your biases or your likes or dislikes or whatever it is. And so that's why they have a whole cross section of people that are voting.
When somebody corners you at a Christmas party or a cocktail party or something, this is probably the conversation you get stuck in, isn't it?
No, I just don't answer it.
Oh, really? I'll move on in a second, I promise.
Yeah, I just don't answer it because there's not a good answer.
You think Ted Nugent?
Because everybody's got their own favorites, and I have some, and I'm not going to say who my favorites are, who aren't in there, but
why wouldn't you say it?
I don't think it's fair. Don't want to influence anything. So, I'll just leave it at that. And, so.
So you think Ted Nugent should get in? Or you're not going to answer this, are you?
There are thousands of stars there.
How many?
And we can come up with all, and they only vote in 6 every year.
Yeah.
5 to 6 every year. So it's a numbers game.
How many people get to vote besides the online voting? How many actual people get to vote?
The online is really for one.
Right.
There's a cross section. I think it's up to around 900 people.
Well, 900 people get to vote, huh?
Yeah. Now the board votes. The board has there are different weights in there, but the past winners, people in the music industry, so it's just like the Academy Awards, and they get a cross section of people that are allowed to vote, or for Cooperstown or they'll have sports writers, and so there's a whole cross section of people that get that are asked to vote on it.
How many people are on the board?
I forget, 20 something.
Okay. Is Meg Griffin on the board? She's a DJ.
No.
Okay. All right, because she was a big proponent of the Dolls, I think. And I think she has some. Anyway, all right, enough of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Does the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame make money? Is it profitable?
It's a museum. It's a not-for-profit.
Oh, okay.
It's a not-for-profit.
All right, sounds good. So you were in a garage band. What did you play in the garage band? What instrument did you
Guitar.
play? Oh, okay. You still have your guitars?
Not from them, but my son's a budding recording artist, and so he took my old electrics, and
Nice.
he's in Brooklyn, and so he's doing well.
He still has your guitars?
He has one.
What guitar?
He's got his,
What was your main guitar?
I had a Rickenbacker.
Oh, you are a Byrds fan.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a 12 string. It wasn't like Roger McGuinn, but it was it was more like it looked a little bit more like what John Lennon played, except it didn't have the shortened neck.
Yeah. I live in San Francisco. Roger McGuinn's right up the road from here.
Right. The cover artist for Bright Midnight.
That's right. Did the Fillmore.
Lives in Petaluma.
Oh, really? He did the Fillmore posters, right?
Yeah, David Singer.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the famous guys, and so he lives there. And I met him through the Fillmore West.
I was just at the Fillmore about a month ago.
For a concert?
Yeah, I went to see a show. I don't know if it's the same building, but it's been there since as long as I've been here.
Yeah, the one they're in now, they've been in a long time.
So who did you grow up listening to? What was your favorite band as a kid? You're 5 years older than me, so I grew up in the 70s.
I like just about all genres. So I'll listen to everything. I like jazz. First concert I ever went to in my entire life, I was a little kid, and I never heard of the group, and it was Dave Brubeck, who was a jazz group.
Right.
And they played in the gym at my school. I grew up in Washington, D.C.,
nice.
and they played in the gym. But I love the era that I write about in Bright Midnight, sort of that late 60s, early 70s, kind of psychedelic, sort of the height of the Beatles. I love classic rock, I love alternative, type of, now I've sort of gotten into sort of Americana style, but I like country, but the old country,
right?
The older country. I'm not really into the pop stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that they've taken over. If you look at how music has progressed, I mean, there's an element of, you call it Americana now. It certainly sounds like Grateful Dead, Byrds, that sort of style. Given a choice of listening, like I have to tell you, given a choice of listening to music, I always go back to some of the sort of the classic rock. And writing this book sort of gave me a new appreciation for the psychedelic era. And I really studied it hard, and I really do think that era, we listen to their music, but they've been sort of caricatured over time as kind of these drug-addled hippies. And these guys were geniuses, and some of them very disciplined in their work, but they've been caricatured over time.
I'm about halfway through with the book now, a little bit less than halfway, but I'm enjoying it. It's a fun read. It
gets, what page are you up to?
I'm up to page 89.
Okay, you're just getting out of, I think, there are 3 acts to it. As you get out of the first part, which you may have just gotten out of or about to, it starts getting really fast paced.
So I'm gonna give the plot for listeners.
Okay.
I don't really read novels and fiction that much. I'm into most things. I'm not that bright, so I read rock bios and memoirs anyway. But it's a fun read, and the plot of this book is. This guy who used to write for Rolling Stone. You correct me if I'm wrong. Guy who used to
he's the classic rock editor. Yeah. He's still there, but he's not really doing much anymore. He's at the twilight of his career.
He's getting these letters delivered to his house, or not to his house, to the Rolling Stone office, and they're saying this guy was murdered. Jimi Hendrix was murdered, and then he leaves a clue, and then Janis Joplin was murdered. He leaves a clue. The guy from Badfinger, I forget his name, was murdered. Anyway,
Peter Ham.
all these guys who were part of the 27 Club. Everybody knows what the 27 Club is. People who died at 27, at the age of 27, and so he all these people. He says they're getting they're murdered, and so he gets on the case and thinks it would be a good article for Rolling Stone, and it could revive his career. But then he starts getting scared and thinks that this is actually a serial killer. Like I said, I'm only halfway through the book. He thinks it's a
and only, if I can interrupt you for a second, only because he gets these clues that start to become more personal and more sinister about the rock stars. But there are clues in there and little, almost like souvenirs off of a deceased body or from their home, like a serial killer would take things, and they typically collect souvenirs, but things that only someone that was there or knew them intimately or would have taken off of their person would have done. And some of the clues are very obscure in there. That's what starts to get the curiosity up. That maybe he should look into it, because Mike, when he first starts getting the clues, he just writes it off as some whacked out hippie. He's working for Rolling Stone magazine. He gets this kind of stuff all the time.
And he had an affair with Janis Joplin, and she was kind of his. At least what I'm getting, she was kind of like his first love.
More of a fling.
Yeah, exactly. It was, So anyway, it's a fun book. It's full of. It's a murder mystery, and it's a fun murder mystery with rock and roll backdrop, which is fun.
It starts to speed up. It speeds up as it goes through. One of the things that I did was the 27 Club is really just one of the commonalities. It is a high octane, CSI murder mystery. It takes place today, reimagining the deaths of these iconic rock stars, that died of overdoses or accidents or some kind of excess, but it reimagines them as murders. And I studied modern forensic techniques, spoke to and had some help from some former FBI investigators and NYPD investigator, and studied modern forensic techniques, even had one of the top neurosurgeons in the country from Johns Hopkins help me interpret some of the autopsies to try to reimagine what would happen if in today's light, with today's technology, you applied it to these causes of death. And many of these guys didn't even have autopsies. They didn't have anything.
Yeah. So
some of the autopsies were just flimsy as can be. And the interesting part, Mike, is that I'm a technologist by trade, and when I couldn't quite connect the dots, there are two technologies. You haven't gotten to them yet. There are two technologies in there that'll sound just naturally like they're in existence. Very advanced forensic techniques, but there are two in there that do not exist today.
So I
made up, and so you'll have fun with that.
You ever hear of a guy named Tappy Wright?
No.
He was Jimi Hendrix's he was a roadie for Jimi Hendrix and a lot of other guys. He wrote a book called Rock Roadie.
Oh, I think I heard about this.
He wrote in his book, he claims that Michael Jeffrey, Jimi Hendrix's manager, confessed to him on his deathbed. I interviewed him on my show. It was a fascinating guy. He's no longer with us, Tappy Wright. May he rest. Anyway, he claims that Michael Jeffrey told him that he held him down, stuffed his mouth full of pills, and then poured 4 bottles of red wine down his throat. And,
Yeah, because he had taken out insurance. There were a lot of, what I found in doing the research, a number of these guys had large insurance policies on themselves. But I don't know if that's as unusual. I mean, it's unusual that there were insurance policies and then they were killed. But, I bet that all top rock stars and members of groups have, the equivalent of key man insurance.
Well, in his book, he makes a pretty convincing argument that actually the whole book is not about Jimi Hendrix dying. It's only like a couple of chapters of the book, but he makes a pretty convincing argument that Hendrix could have been murdered.
Yeah. Now, you haven't gotten to it. This is not. It's a murder mystery, but I don't want to give away anything. but it's not that each of these guys were killed by other people.
The theme is what I'm getting here. It's a serial killer who killed all these people.
Well, you're going to have
so far.
Don't go to the end, but it's a very surprise ending.
Okay, good.
It's not what you think.
I'm gonna guess I'm gonna guess that the guy gets back with his ex-wife. That's a guess. I don't know why I'm guessing. I'll just finish reading the book.
Just finish reading the book. I think you'll get a kick out of it because it takes you down a number of twists and turns. It's not an intuitive ending.
I just started reading it last night, so it's a pretty quick read. If anybody, I highly recommend the book for everybody. Again, it's called Bright Midnight. It's a fun book.
It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get ebooks, iBooks.
Any thoughts of doing an audiobook?
I think if there's demand for it, I wanted to first get this out. I mean, it's just been out, a little over a month, and we're getting really good reviews on it. If any of your listeners, Google it, they'll see it's gotten a whole bevy of good reviews, and we've got a couple more things. I've been doing a lot of radio and TV, a lot of bloggers, and reviewers. A lot of people that either people are interested in it because it's about rock music, like you, or people that are just interested in thrillers and murder mysteries. And after I've got a couple more, I'm doing something on America's Most Haunted in a week. And then after the first of the year, we're going to do some things out in San Francisco and LA, particularly around the Grammys.
How long did it take you to write this book?
About a year.
How do you have the time to write a book when you're doing all this? Are you married?
Divorced.
Okay. No,
but I have divorced.
I've been trying to write.
I don't sleep.
Okay. Well, there you go. I've been trying to write a book now for 2 years, and it's not as easy as you think, friends.
No, it's not, and it's hard. The one thing that helped me, Mike, and if people are thinking about doing it, is my son told me about a book that a guy named Stephen Pressfield, who's actually one of my favorite writers. He writes. I don't read mysteries. I love history. I love histories, and this guy writes about ancient Greek and Roman history and warfare and all this, but he wrote a book called The War of Art, not the art of war, the war of art. And it could be about anything in life, but it's really about writing and how and I've interviewed about 14 when I was trying to get started, just to understand the process, interviewed 14, pretty accomplished authors, and they all said the same thing that the book said. You just have to do it. There's no secret formula. It's not something where you have an inspiration and all of a sudden it comes to you and it's done. It's just you get up every day and you do it, or you just carve the time out and you do it. And if you don't do that, then it'll never get done. So they think of it as a job, as just another job or a chore that they have to do, and they put the time into it. And sometimes it's you have a lot. There were weeks where I maybe got 2 sentences, a paragraph. And then there were other times when, like on a Saturday or Sunday or, took a day off, I'd start at 7 or 8 in the morning and it'd be dark and I didn't even, I was just in the zone.
Oh, I bet you were proud after that. That's a good day of writing.
Yeah, that's a good day of writing. But the original manuscript was 450 pages and it went out in print at 300. So that's how much I took out.
Okay.
Did
somebody approach you before? Did somebody approach you to write the book, or did you write the book and then shop it around?
No, I wrote it and then got an agent, and then the agent got a publisher. And it's really hard for first time author to break into it. And just unfortunately, books about music don't sell. Mysteries are the the mysteries are the top selling books in the world, and then history's right below that.
But I'm guessing that rock and roll memoirs or musician memoirs sell good because everybody has written a book that's.
Yeah, but I don't think they sell that well. I think Bruce Springsteen, but not relative to the big, the James Pattersons and those kind of nothing even close to that. I think the Springsteen one maybe just because all of his fans bought it, but so I'm going to be coming out to San Francisco and doing some events. I mean, I'm going to be at the Amoeba bookstore. Okay. I'll do some radio and TV. So I'm going to be a bunch of places there and for a couple days, and then going down to San Francisco for about 3 or 4. I'm going down to LA for about 3 or 4 days, particularly around the Grammys.
Okay.
And be doing some events there, and then we're working on 2 guest lectureships at USC and UCLA music schools to talk about the book and the genre.
Well, when you come to San Francisco, I'll come to the book signing and
okay, I'll let you know.
And hopefully you'll say hello.
I think it's going to be on February 6th. That's the day that we're trying to set. But it'll be, do you know the Amoeba bookstore?
The record store on Haight Street.
Right. Yeah, that's where we're going to go. Yeah.
The big record store.
There'll be a couple other places, but that's one that we really wanted to do. It's it's a great book. I think that it's no one's ever written anything like it about this genre. And so it is very, very unique out in the marketplace right now. And I had a lot of fun writing it. I'm having more fun talking about it with people because I think that it's, there are a couple of kinds, Mike, there's a couple of kinds of people that like it. One, clearly if you're sort of a boomer type and you have some reminiscence about it, and you like that kind of music, then people are drawn to it immediately. And when they read the book, they start looking up all the stuff. They start playing their old records. And we actually, at the Rock Hall, when we did it, we had a whole Spotify set list of all the songs that are mentioned in it. And then the other people, mystery writers and mystery readers and thriller readers really like it too. But the thing that surprised me the most is there are a lot of younger, like millennials, younger kids that love it because they love the music. And it becomes informative for them. When I showed it to my kids, they didn't know anything about, these people being enemies of the state at the time and the way they knew nothing about it. All they knew was the music.
Yeah, the Nixon tones.
So it's create a little bit of, I'm hoping it creates a little bit of a reawakening of that time period, and particularly these stars.
When you were writing the book, did you ever convince yourself that maybe it's a possibility that some of these people could have been murdered? There's conspiracy theories about all these people anyway.
You there? Yeah, it did. I didn't go into it thinking that. I went into it saying, okay, this is what happened. They probably had drug overdose, so they did this. And I started reading everything I could. Now, one of the interesting things, I got access to some of the deep archives at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Which was interesting because I went back to, they allowed me to have access to some of the original editors from Rolling Stone magazine, some of the original writers, investigative reporters and editors and writers that were writing about the events at the deaths of these stars. And they also had cassette tape interviews of people. So it gave me sort of an insight and a view as to the emotion of that time, like nothing that I could get out of any book or article or off of the internet, And so that kind of brought it to life a little bit differently. And then when I started doing some of the forensic work and then looking at, and I saw, and a lot of these have all sorts of opinions. There are all sorts of conspiratorial opinions and people that had deathbed confessions or witnesses or all this sort of stuff, and I just looked at it very circumstantially, and some things that I had never seen written before that I just kind of I just sort of accumulated it all, and that gave me that that sort of, that gave me the possibility that maybe there could have been something sinister here. Like Mike, imagine what would happen today if 30 days after a concert, within 30 days after a concert, that three major global rock stars headlined.
Yeah, exactly.
They were all found dead.
Exactly.
They just happened to be the same age. That's just a coincidence. But they just happened to be that. What would happen? Or Brian Jones. Brian Jones owned the Rolling Stones. He owned the name. It was his group. And he was a creative spark. He gets kicked out of his group.
Maybe Mick and Keith had him killed, so they could get the name.
But he gets kicked out of his group, and he was a great swimmer, and he's found dead floating in his pool 30 days after he's kicked out of the group that he founded.
How old was Mark Bolan when he died? Was he 27 too?
No. So some of it is just really. Some of it is just weird as you start to go through. The Hendrix thing that you said, I had heard that too. But also, one of the clues in the book, I don't want to, suggests that Hendrix and Brian Jones were going to get together as a group, and that one clue that I think you've already gone through, that exists.
Oh, so there was actually a song with Brian Jones and Jimi Hendrix
They
playing.
recorded My Little One, and sometimes it's on the web and sometimes it isn't. The way I described it, that exists.
Okay.
They were thinking of recording together, and Brian Jones owned the rights to the Rolling Stones. So this is, there's a lot going on behind the scenes here, but that makes it intriguing, and there are a lot of conspiratorial theories. But when you read the book, none of that's why they got killed.
Okay. Well, like I said,
you'll find out it's not what you think.
Like I said, it's a
That's
fun.
why it's a good thriller.
It's a fun read. My time of music was probably 10 years after that. I grew up in the mid '70s, but still, you don't even have to be a fan of this time of music to like the book. It's a fun read if you like music and if you like murder mysteries. It's a good, well written, fun read, and like I said, I just started reading it last night. I'm almost halfway done with it. So even an idiot like me can read this thing quickly.
Oh, I think you're going to love it. Did you? One of the things, Mike, that I did is, and I kind of paid homage to all of like the high fidelity geeks and music geeks, out there, and we had fun with it when we were at the debut at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame last month. They're like obscure groups in there. They're obscure songs. They're like little nuances of places that were very famous in rock and roll history that are just part of the vignettes. And so it's interesting. There's one vignette, and I think you've already covered it. It's one vignette with Jim Morrison. Is Gantry Elliott, who is the protagonist, who's the lead character,
the guy who writes for Rolling Stone.
Senior writer. He's meeting up with Jim Morrison to do an interview at the Hullabaloo Club on Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
In LA, okay? And they're listening to a group called J.K. and Co., John K. Well, J.K. and Co. actually was a group. Back there, the lead singer and writer and arranger, the leader of the group was 15 years old. And he had gone up at the beginning of the summer, I think it was Summer of Love, 1967. He had gone up to Vancouver, recorded this lush psychedelic record. I may have only been like an EP, only 4 songs, and came back, and it became an underground sensation in California, and then he was never heard from again. I actually located the guy. He's living in Mallorca, off the coast of Spain, playing in a jazz group. But, everybody thought he had died. But there's things like that in there, and little vignettes they're real.
That's for the real music geeks.
Those are for the high fidelity guys.
And that gives you rock credibility when you put
that gives
kind
you
of stuff
street
in.
cred.
Exactly.
Yeah, with those guys. Yes, with those guys. So I think it's it's good, and I think that. So I thought I'd mention that because it's kind of fun. But what really got me thinking about the idea, I collect rock and roll memorabilia.
Yeah, what kind of memorabilia do you have?
I've got, quite a, I've got, pretty good collection.
Is it all from the 60s?
And later, it goes on from, it starts around the Beatles and Rolling Stones and the Hendrix and the Doors, and then goes, to things more current. Goes through about 3 generations. And but what got me thinking about this, I had just purchased, and I was hanging it up and mounting. I just purchased a 2-page pullout from something called the Record Mirror, and it was sort of like the jazz standard variety of London back in the 60s. And this was the Record Mirror from 1964. I forget I think it was February 64 or something. And they were announcing this hot new group called the Rolling Stones.
Oh yeah, I remember I remember reading about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what. And so, I was looking at it, and what amazed me was how young these guys were. You had, Keith Richards, no lines in his face,
Right.
sort of a pimply faced Mick Jagger, and then Brian Jones, who had founded the Rolling Stones. And right next to them, I've got some Jimi Hendrix and then Jim Morrison, the Doors memorabilia. And, I knew that they had all died at 27, and there were a lot of, conspiracy theories and a lot of suspicions around it. But I got this kernel of an idea then. Well, what if they did die from excess? What if they were murdered? And I started, I did a little bit of research and then dropped it, a little bit of research. And then as I got into it a little bit more, it seemed more suspicious. So, I rewrote the story about 30, 40 times and in all sorts of different ways. And finally came up with what was published.
When you did the book, did you just start typing and the story just came out of you, or did you outline it and stuff first?
No, I just not quite. I tried to outline the whole thing, but I changed the beginning more than a dozen times. Changed the ending probably two dozen times. When I hooked up with the editor and the publishers, I mean, I had good guys that became bad guys that became good guys. They wanted a love interest in it. I have it, all sorts of stuff. It changed a number of things, streamlined a number of things. But, I have a basic idea, tried to outline it.
Oh, really? The publishers told you they wanted a love interest, and
they wanted something in there. I had a little bit. I wasn't really. There is a sex scene in there.
Yeah.
But it lasts about 2 paragraphs.
That's a Janis Joplin sex scene. That was uncomfortable for me.
It's a quickie. It's a quickie.
I think I would be kind of uncomfortable if the publisher started telling me how. I'm sure it happens. I know it happens all the time. But when you've written this book and then the publisher tells you got to go back and put a love interest in it, that would kind of bum me out a little bit.
Well, I think you have to look at it from 2 perspectives.
Yeah, I understand.
If you're, I've never written a book. I want people to like it. These guys are professionals at what they do, so they know what people want, and you want to have the right. There are formulas to mysteries,
right,
and the thrillers, and so people want to be able to kind of anticipate things. They want to have something that surprises them, but they don't want to have it too off the wall. I didn't really have an ego about it. The integrity of the story is there. If, you go to a publisher, and those can go to professionals and professional editors, to get the kind of help to help shape it right. So they do this for a living. And so I was pretty open to their advice, but it didn't change the integrity of the story. It just added some color here and there.
You look pretty good for 60 years old. Is that an old picture?
No, okay. That was taken last year.
Well, congratulations. You're still looking good.
Well, that's what rock and roll does.
Exactly. There you go.
Like music.
All the drugs.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris Formant, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was very fun talking to you. I hope I didn't bum you out with all the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame questions.
Happens all the time.
Everybody's passionate about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, everybody says they hate it, and everybody's passionate about it, but everybody's interested in it. So,
yeah. Well, of all the things that I do, that's one of the more fun things.
How do you get to be on the board of trustees of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
It had nothing to do with my job. I mean, and now I'm chairing the technology committee. We're trying to take it to to become very advanced. I mean, we have a vision of creating a virtual rock hall and a number of things,
right?
Because we want to be able to really want to expand it globally, and then expand it so people can have different kinds of experiences. Because it's very unique. It's it's one of the highest rated institutions in the world. I think there's one that's rated. This is like if Congress is rated like 10, this is rated like 99.9.
Well, how do you get to be on the board of trustees? Does somebody ask you?
They asked me, but it was it's kind of an unusual way that I was asked, and it actually happened when I started beginning to do research on this book, and so I got in not because of my job. Not because I was an executive, not because I'm a technologist, not because of, that I was someone in the music industry.
You don't have to make a big donation or something like that.
No. They just, I was doing research for my book. I got a sense of some of the antiquated technology. I approached one of the board members who I knew I didn't know directly, to see if he could get me access to some of the archives and stuff. He said, "Yeah, let me get you." And in doing that, he and I became friends. And I complained to him that it was pretty antiquated technology that they had, and they've got to get into the 21st century. And we started talking about it and talking. And I got a call one day, say, "Hey, listen, we really like to have you join. I mean, you're
just
sort
like
of it had nothing to do with my business, and now I can help them out from a business standpoint." But
and you get to vote.
And I get to vote.
Well,
It is the coolest board in the world.
Do you have to pay for a table at the ceremony?
It's a museum. We have to pay for everything.
So you have to pay for a table too.
We do. Remember, this is a nonprofit organization. It's not a profit-making organization, and all the money goes back into the museum. And so, it's I'm really excited about where they are. We've done extremely well in the last couple of years. As has Cleveland, we've done extremely well, and we have ambitions of trying to take this, more globally, around the world, and even possibly setting up different, whether they're virtual or real rock halls, around the globe, because it is, Mike, there's nothing like it, and I think that as we define the franchise beyond just classic rock, and you define it and you include a lot of world music in it, it's, people love rock and roll everywhere in the world. They love rock and roll, and they love all these stars as much as you and I do, and they love the music. And so, we want to be able to, to take it to everyone, in some way, shape, or form. And, because I mentioned when we first started, it's a Library of Congress for rock. I mean, the one thing I saw that really struck me, and when they asked me if I wanted to get on, I said, yeah. When I'd be sitting in the archives and doing my research, and it was just me and the archive, no one goes in there, and I'd see people, every day I'd see people bringing in like these treasured posters and possessions. It was like the Vietnam Wall. They would give them in and they'd bequeath them to it. I don't know what they do with all this stuff, but it's like, this is the place.
Yeah.
This is the place. There isn't any other place. And so it's a very special responsibility that that they feel that they have to not only educate people, but to keep it, evolving over time, but to protect the past and to document it. I'll leave you with this before we leave. One of the things that we're doing right now, we've been feverishly, trying to do audio and video recordings of as many of these rock stars as we can, because of the age of them, and look what's happened over the past year.
Exactly.
But we've got about 100 of them. We're trying to get all this documented so we could capture this. And at the debut, David Singer, we were talking about just the poster artist.
Well,
and David was, there were only a couple of them left, and he started talking about how rock posters evolved and why they look like they did when they started. Whole thing. It's just it's amazing, and that's their special responsibility.
I think there should be. I haven't been there, like I said, but I think there should be a wing just for rock posters, and for album covers, because back then album covers had a lot to do with turning kids on to music. So
there's gonna be a special this coming year. I think it's going to come out in March or April. They haven't decided, but they are going to have a special sort of rock poster. It's going to be, this is the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, the 50th anniversary of the Summer of Love. And so they're going to do a whole sort of San Francisco, Fillmore rock poster thing that focuses on Bill Graham.
You got to go upstairs at the Fillmore and look at that wall.
I've seen it. I've got a video of it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, the lady that introduced me to David Singer is the curator of that. That was the connection. It's the most unbelievable room. I mean, floor to ceiling. It's overdose great. Of rock poster. It's every famous rock poster that you've ever seen is there.
Yep, and some great rock photographs too. There's
an unbelievable place.
There's an iconic Who photograph that's in there that's unbelievable. Yeah. All right, well, Chris Formant, I really appreciate it. I'm going to ask you one favor.
Yes, sir.
Will you please vote Jay Giles in next time?
You and his son-in-law. Son-in-law kept sending me tweets.
I'm going to ask for 4. Jay Giles. New York Dolls, Susie Quattro, and Ted Nugent. They all deserve it, okay?
Yeah. How about the Moody Blues?
They deserve it too. You're right. 5. There you go.
Now I live in New Jersey, and everybody wants Bon Jovi.
Yeah, he'll get in before Ted Nugent. And he'll get in before Susie Quattro.
I don't know.
Yeah, trust me, he will.
Lots of people get nominated. So if I showed you the nomination list, you start scratching your head.
Yeah, I know. I've seen them.
But there's, you may not like a particular star. I may not like it, but
even if I don't like them, I know when they deserve to be in, whether I'm a fan or not.
Yeah.
All right, Chris Formant. I could talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame forever, but thank you so much for coming on. Bright Midnight is the title of the book. It's a fun read, friends. I highly recommend it. And Chris Formant, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right.
Take care.
Have
a good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
There you go, Chris Formant. That was fun. I had a good time. I hope I didn't piss him off with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame talk, but it's got to be done, friends. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. You know how to reach me. rockandrollgeek.com is where you can find the show. If you like this interview, let me know. rockandrollgeek@gmail.com. Area code 706-621-ROCK, or you can that's area code 706-621-7625. Or you can just send me an email, you can just record it and send me an email to rockandrollgeek@gmail.com. Find me on the Facebook, R&R Geek. Find me on the Instagram, Rock and Roll Geek. Don't ask. Find me on the Twitter, R&R Geek. Thank you so much for the donations, friends. Your donations keep this show going. Without your donations, this show would die horrible, putrid, stench-filled, murdered like all of the myth of 27 people. All right. We'll talk to you next time, friends.
It's a rock and roll geek train wreck.